We just signed 26 players at a very highly ranked class, a class that I think it follows suit the last two that we've brought in here as far as academic fit for Ohio State University, a culture fit, and a character fit, which I think I just want to credit our staff, and they did a phenomenal job. You know, our coaching staff, you look at the early signing period, you had 3 weeks after a rival game. We lost one of those for obvious reasons. We played the Big Ten championship game. And then you had 2 left and to get ready for a bowl game. And then obviously Christmas, and the timing of our bowl game wasn't perfect. So people ask the question, did you like the early signing period? We did very well. The majority of class was signed on that date, but I didn't enjoy, the timing of that was very, very hard on our staff and myself. But it all worked out. January was far less drama, far less panic like you normally speak or normally you deal with in Januaries. So I'm going to be curious to see how our colleagues feel about it, and we have to keep in our minds that the one thing that only matters is the student athlete. Do the student athletes have an opportunity to go where they wanted to go? And if the answer is yes, and it was beneficial for them, then I think this is something we continue. If it's not, then obviously we have to revisit it. So once again, I want to thank our staff. I've had some great staffs. It's just hard to say. As far as recruiting staff, this is one of the best I've ever been around. Even this morning, we had our mat drill session this morning, and Coach Giano, I've been on the phone for a couple hours, and I went right at it, and Coach Johnson, and there's Coach Day. We had our entire staff. The one thing about here, and I've made it clear, you can't coach here at Ohio State unless you're an elite recruiter, and you just can't. That's non-existent. I've heard the old days where he's a guru of this or a guru of that, and he's not a great recruiter. You can't coach here. Recruiting is the name of the game, and our coaches all did a very good job, and very proud of them. The other people I'd like to thank, and the young man, Nick, who just committed to us from Tampa, and he made a comment to me, and this made you feel good, that he's a relationship person, and one of the big selling points he had was when J.K. Dobbins talked about his relationship with Coach Ricky Mirati, our strength coach. And he's not a strength coach. Coach Mick is a guy that deals with them hands-on. He's very involved in their lives, and people like Nick need to know that. So I thanked our staff, but even above our staff, I want to thank our players. There's nothing quite like walking into a locker room of like-minded people. And that's what I believe this class, that's why they came to Ohio State. And Gene Smith's in the back room. I'd like to thank him too. Never once has he said no when it is in regards to player, student athlete welfare. This is a tough game. It's a tough game that involves injuries. It's a tough game that you have to monitor all kinds of different safety precautions for your players. Not one time I've been told no. And that's a very important factor. He allows myself and our coaching staff to fully invest in our players. I'm talking about on the field, but everybody knows about our program off the field, and there's never been any hesitation from Gene or administration about doing what's right for our players. So with that said, I'll answer some questions for you. 26 guys signed, and I think how many are here, 8 or 9?
9.
9 guys are here mid-semester, and it's a good-looking team right now. So I'll answer questions for you.
Second row left, Bill.
Urban, you touched on maybe the drama-free January period. As you guys are recruiting Nick, it's a 5-star player, very sort of heated recruiting battle. How much did not having to deal with, recruiting 20 guys help in your pursuit of him?
Yeah, we call it a laser light. The focus was on a few guys, and the few guys jumped in the boat for the most part. So, yeah, I think the question is very valid. Can you really put your laser lights on a guy like Nick when you got 15 of them out there? I remember the old days. Now you went into January with 4 or 5 commitments, and you had 20 to go get. Florida State, when I first got in the SEC, Florida State, when I was at Florida, they would have one signing day, one big recruiting weekend right before signing day, and they get 20 signees. Those days are gone. So it's just a much different approach right now.
Obviously, he's a very talented player, Nick, but to get another tackle in this group, how important is that for you guys?
Yeah, you had to. Yeah, Max Ray, and then obviously Thayer Munford is going to be a very good player, but everybody in the country is looking for the tall, athletic, elongated guys that can bend, and they're hard to find. And that's why they're paid so well in the NFL, because those those body types are hard to find. Then you throw a 3.8 GPA on top of that, a very intelligent guy, very mature guy, and he's a great finish to that class.
Front row middle, Dave.
Yeah, he's ranked as the #1 offensive tackle recruit in the country. Just obviously, you wanted to get a tackle in this class, as you mentioned, to get the #1 ranked tackle in this class. Can you take us through that recruitment?
Yeah, there was, well, Greg Schiano was knee-deep in that one, as well as Stud, and it was one that this has been going on for a couple of years. He's a most thorough evaluator I've ever recruited from A to Z. We sat in my office for about 2 hours, and I had him go through each program, and he kind of volunteered all kinds of information I've never quite heard, and he's the one that shared the information about. A big selling point here is when I was talking to J.K. Dobbins, who was his host, about his relationship with the coaches on the staff. And he volunteered because J.K.'s a relationship-type person as well. So obviously he's got to come here and perform. But if you're a betting person, bet on this guy to have a great college career on and off the field.
You touched on the early signing period already. When we talked to you then, you said you didn't like it. As you reflect on it now, do you think you're a bigger fan of it, so to speak?
I don't know. I haven't had time to evaluate it. Once again, I don't think it really should be up to myself or our coaches. Thanks, Jared. Did the student athletes get a chance to go where they want? And I don't think when we first had conversations about that, people would be forced to sign and maybe not look around. And I think that's what happened. And so, once again, this is all about the student athlete getting to go where they want to go.
Front row right, Bill.
Urban, can you clarify the status of Greg Schiano? There were reports he was leaving. Now there are reports that he's staying. Is he staying? What's his role going to be?
Yeah, Coach Schiano, just like last year, he turned down a handful of head coaching opportunities in college, multiple opportunities again in the National Football League this year, multiple opportunities in college football. And he's not one of those guys that gets it out there. Me and him are kind of built to the same. We don't use that to try to leverage people or try to. That's zero conversation in the media. It's between myself and him, and then obviously Gene Smith is very involved. I can at least a dozen opportunities Coach Schiano's had, and we had many discussions, and he's informed me that he's 100% staying at Ohio State University. So that's done, and he's here. And I think he's going to be made available to you here in a little bit.
Okay. How important is keeping him? Could you address the departure of Kerry Combs and who might replace him?
Yeah, he's essential to our program right now, Coach Schiano. He's, if he's not my best recruiter, he certainly is right there near the top. He manages so much for me off the field as well, as being one of the top defense coordinators in America. And he's a relationship person. That he's not one of those coaches that knows his position or that side of the ball, and that's it. He knows everyone because he's been a head coach before. So a very valuable member of our staff, as many of the guys. Kerry Combs, that took my breath away a little bit. Kerry's a dear friend. Him and Holly are, for the rest of our lives, will be very close. He was instrumental in our success we've had here. Great Ohioan, a great person, and I was shocked when he did that. But he's a friend, and we obviously wish him all the very best.
Any thoughts, or how close are you to replacing him on the staff?
Time's on our side a little bit, so I'd say probably give us a week and we should have a replacement.
Front row left, Tim.
Urban, kind of following up on that, pivoting on the defensive staff, you guys hired Alex Grinch about a month ago. Obviously, role not determined as of yet, but what was it about him that made him a guy that you needed to get, and how has he blended in your staff so far?
I started studying Alex back in the summertime. You always try to have an on-call. We found out that we were going to be able to add a 10th position, and I believe that you should probably have five, like most, I imagine, you're going to have 5 each, 5 offense, 5 defense. I wanted to add someone on defense. I wanted to have I need high-energy guys in our program. When you start losing guys like Luke Fickle and Kerry Combs, who are energy people, great recruiters, great people that get their units to perform, he fit that mold. And then what he did at Washington State, I think, was outstanding. I really studied him. Throughout the year, I would check their scores all the time. I'd check the statistics. I even watched some film on them. And then on top of that, he's an Ohio guy that wanted to be here. He had the minute we offered him the job, he had a handful of job offers right on top of it. That obviously, obviously he picked the right one.
You mentioned the Ohio connection. Obviously, it's a Grove City guy. Was that, a major factor? Or is that
Huge
just kind
part
of
of it.
the bonus?
Yeah, he played at Mount Union, which I have great respect for. All those guys that come from that program are usually excellent football people. And him and his wife is from Alliance, Ohio, and he's from right down the street. So, yeah, that was a perfect fit.
One more with it. With Combs leaving, obviously, it's a huge loss for the defensive backfield. How much is Grinch's background in defensive backs? Not necessarily that he's going to be a defensive backs guy, but how much does that background in coaching defensive backs help maybe soften that blow a little bit?
I think it does. The one thing that Kerry was an expert at corner play, and he had 5 first-round draft picks. I would imagine never done before in the history of football. What Coach Combs has done, so that's big shoes to fill. Whoever gets that spot, and Coach Grinch will be very involved in that, as will Schiano.
Front row right, Austin.
Urban, you've said multiple times over the years that you will look and that the rankings matter because somebody's keeping score. I don't know exactly where this class is going to finish, but if it does come in at number 1, how might you celebrate it and recognize it with your staff and Mark Pantoni and those guys? What they accomplished.
Probably
there?
toast tonight and then move on to next year's class. That's about all you do. No, we do, and I don't want to call their people not telling the truth, but if they are keeping score, you try to win, but is that the end all? Of course not. Will that matter? I think it matters that successful teams have great players, and the rankings is something we keep an eye on, but that's not an end all.
I've obviously never been behind the scenes to do this the way you have many times over the years, but when did you maybe have a sense that this caliber of class was coming together, kind of the way you envisioned, maybe when you got here?
When I got here,
You said you wanted to have a number 1 class here at some point. That was the goal every year. I mean, maybe it won't finish, I don't know, but when did you have a sense in this last calendar year that it might be coming together this way?
well, I have fun with the number 1 class. I don't want people to think that's what we recruit for. It's not at all. It's something we keep an eye on. At Ohio State, you should, the coaches here have always recruited very well. If you can't recruit Ohio State, you're not a very good recruiter. What we have to offer people, and once again, I gave credit to our athletic director, what he allows me to do and us to do, and it's about the student athlete welfare. It's awesome to go walk into school and say, hey, by the way, here's what we can do for you. And I push it very hard. The days, if you can't recruit, this isn't a place for you.
Front row left, Doug.
Urban, what do you do when an important guy on your staff has an NFL offer? What is that discussion like, and do you persuade guys to stay here? Do you offer them enticements to stay here? How do you do it? What do you do?
All the above. It's trying to think who we've had leave. I've had Mike Vrabel leave, and I kind of felt that might happen. Kerry Combs is a shocker. Greg Schiano, I don't know. I'm trying to think who else. Larry Johnson. What's that?
Just Ryan Day in this cycle.
Ryan Day, yeah. And then Larry Johnson, you name it. He's had an offer from everyone. I mean, that's how good he is. So I try to create an atmosphere around here that we take care of our coaches and that it's an excellent work environment. The best work environment you can have is sit in a room with quality people. I think we have done an excellent job on that. Do we entice them, or do we, that has become a little bit of a factor where, people want to take care of their families. Do we get into bidding wars? We don't do that. However, we want to do the best we can, and once again, our athletic director allows me to do that.
And if you could just clarify the situation with Ryan and Kevin now on the offensive staff. Ryan staying, did his role change at all? Does he have more say in the play calling? Is his arrangement with Kevin any different than it was last year?
Not much different at all. I think that's still to be determined. He was a co-coordinator by title last year. He wasn't. He was very much involved in the play calling a year ago. He was very much involved in the game planning, actually led the room in certain areas, so I don't see that much changing. The biggest change is the title, and as the evolution of the staff last year, that the both of them worked very well together, and they were both very involved in the play calling. So the one thing that I've tried to make clear too is there's not a dictator here. There's not some guru going to come in here and say it's his offense. That will never happen here. Same thing on defense. We're not going to hire some guy that hey, this is so-and-so's defense. It's not. It's Ohio State's defense. And every coach in there has an ownership in that. Same thing on offense, that when Kevin Wilson or Ryan Day, whomever, come into the program, it's not, hey, this is his offense, because it's not at all. Now, they all have a chance to make it better, and I think they have. So we don't get caught. I don't know if you've noticed that. In 16 years, I've never been caught up in that. It seems to be those are great questions, but it's insignificant as far as the way we look at it.
I just don't know sometimes, especially on offense, sometimes like being the play caller seems like a thing sometimes that matters to some guys.
Well, when you get your program, do it that way. That's fine.
Oh, yeah.
We don't do it that way. We do the Ohio State offense, and everybody's involved. And I've heard that too. This
Yeah.
is so-and-so's offense. He's going to do it his way. You never heard that here.
Third row, Dan?
Urban, you have a couple early enrollee corners, Seven Banks, Tyreek Johnson came in between the time they signed and now they've lost a cornerbacks coach. How have you guys managed that with them to kind of help them through the transition process to a new cornerbacks coach?
It's been tough, especially the guy that left. And, yeah, he was not he's a relationship person. Coach Schiano has assumed that control. They've only been back now, I think, for 3 weeks or so since the bowl game. And they've been without Coach Combs, I think, for 2 now. So we're just all getting back now. It's all going on as we speak. Because players get 2 weeks off all by themselves after their first 2 weeks of school. Now we're all back, and we're starting to get back involved with the players. So.
Keeping Greg Schiano and bringing in Alex Grinch and then bringing in another coach, how do you balance out all of their roles for this season?
That's what we do here for the next 3-4 months. To hire the best possible coaches you can, and then let them work together as a staff and do what's best.
Do you feel like that next coach has to be a cornerbacks coach?
I think so. We haven't finalized that yet.
Next door, Andrew?
An unintended consequence of the early signing period was that the pool kind of shrunk of players that you could get. And it kind of forced a lot of programs to go after just the best player available instead of necessarily addressing the needs that you have. And instead of going after maybe a 3-star offensive tackle, you guys would sign wide receiver and Chris Olave. How did you guys see your approach change as a result?
That's exactly what you said. There reaches a point, even with the old signing period, that you reach a point where you say best available player. And because if you say we need an offensive tackle, but there's not one of the same quality that we need to play here, then we move in another direction. But best available is a term we actually use.
Did you guys kind of look at it as a second chance with a lot of players? Obviously, you missed out on an in-state offensive tackle the first time around, and it allowed you guys to go after another, maybe even better offensive tackle.
Yeah, I know that received a lot of publicity, and he's a fine player. But we had our rankings well before any decisions were made, and the guy we got was the one that the laser lights were on.
Third row, middle, Art?
Urban, when you look at just the order of which official visits are taken, the kid that you just got, Nicholas, took his last official visit with you guys.
Amazing, yeah.
Is there an importance in your mind for when official visits occur, and do you feel like Ohio State's in a better opportunity to land a player when you guys get the last crack at him, or is that like a fan thing?
But that's when guys like Schiano, the veterans, are so critical. If you start visiting those guys at a big marquee game early in the season and they're not going to decide till now, they forget, just the way it is. What have you done for me lately? And what's in their memory bank about Ohio State? And watch this year now. Do you realize April, May, and June are official visits? And so we're going to probably try to minimize official visits for people that aren't going to decide for a while. But I'm hearing a lot of kids are going to decide by the summer. So I think what the committees have been put together to study all this, I think it's unintended evolution of what's happening. And I don't believe when they said let's have early signing, everybody's going to be signed by June. I'm concerned that might happen, and I'm not a big fan of that, as is high school coaches aren't a big fan of that either. So this dynamic is ever changing. And what you just said is the recruiter has to be a very sharp guy and understand what we're dealing with, because bringing a guy on a beautiful fall afternoon here as opposed to bringing him in January, those are things you think about too. But that's a little bit overrated as well. We've had some of our best players on cold weekends. And so those are all, the recruiter's got to know what he's doing.
And Urban, as you're well aware, based on what you hear when you're on your radio show every week during the season, there are a lot of fans that always wonder how long you're going to be here, and you were asked about it. The early signing day, I was wondering, when you sign a class like this and it keeps getting better or in the same caliber every single year, how does that change, or does it change your perception of your future, the state of this program? And it just seems like it'd be harder to not see something through when you keep doing it every year. It seems to like.
I don't know where that's coming from. That's never come from me, and we're going to sign an extension here soon, 'cause the university's been good enough to extend something to me, and so I think that's all down the road news, but I feel great, and I don't know, once again, for someone to bring that up in recruiting, I don't, that's easy to fight against because it's not true. So I don't know how many more years you're going to coach and all that. I feel fantastic. The program's healthy, and we're going. So, and I'm going to get some more years put on my contract. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just paranoia, but I just don't know what it. Every single year, it seems like when you guys are bringing in a class like this, that's just a renewal or more affirmation that this program is healthy. And I just don't know. Every single February, when you look at this whole class and it's number 1 or number 2, and you have the numbers that you have, the talent that you're coming in, if that changes your perspective of your own future, or if that's just.
I don't. Once again, all due respect, I don't know where that's coming from. It's not coming from anywhere within this building.
Last couple of questions, individuals rather. Front row right, Tim?
Me? Oh, good. Following up on that, is there a sense, though, that you guys do have it rolling recruiting-wise? And when did you, you've been doing this for a while and obviously been successful here the last several years, but what is it like when you've sort of got it rolling as a staff?
Well, you get paranoid. I know I'm paranoid. How do you keep it rolling? Like, we're going to celebrate a very high-ranked class, a bunch of players that on paper look fantastic and they look even better in person. And then we toast it, and everybody, tomorrow you better have the next guy on the phone for us. We already had a blitz, I want to say yesterday. A blitz is, I think we had 43 calls made in this office to the top 19s in America for next year. So that's the paranoia, I guess, that I live with, is that how do you top this year's with next year's?
You kind of touched on this a minute ago, but, obviously you had a kid from Fairfield, Ohio go to Clemson on signing day back in December the 20th, the first signing day. But it made it acute on Nick, whatever you want to call him, Nick St. How do you say it? Petit Frere. Yeah. But anyway, it made it acute then to sign him. But when you get that call, what was that like for you to know that you had nailed him?
Nick?
Yeah, it made it more acute, I guess.
Yeah, we actually got the call, I want to say yesterday, was that he wanted to be a Buckeye, and that was 50-year-old man acting silly and chest bumping and jumping up and down and all that stuff. So it was a very good feeling. He filled a need that was, every college in America has that need, and that's an elite offensive tackle.
Last thing, Antoine Jackson showed up. He had to have some surgery on his ankle and stuff for his foot. But what do you expect out of him? Obviously, he's sort of the uncle of this of this recruiting class.
Yeah, his attitude's been great. He just had a little piece of bone taken out his foot from an old injury. He should be back for spring practice. Has a great attitude, and he's here because of Coach Johnson and want to be a part of the Buckeyes, and so we need to get him ready. He's got to play next year.
And final question, Dave? Front row right.
Urban, when we talk about early enrollees, as a 17, 18-year-old, that's a tough call to make for some kids.
Yeah.
If you were 17 or 18, what would you look at as the pros and cons of enrolling early? And then as a football coach, what do you hope they get out of coming here early?
We were one of the first teams to do that, I want to say back in '06, that really started, and that was all new to me. I wasn't aware that was going on, and so you started getting in early enrollees, and what I found out is that they have a better chance of playing early. That's not an absolute, but for obvious reasons. They are officially in our weight program. They're eating all the meals that Ohio State athletes, so you see their bodies start to grow, because high school athletes a lot of times don't eat like that, and they don't get trained like that. And quite honestly, my son's a senior in high school now, and I remember being a senior in high school. Springtime, a lot of things do not get done in the classroom or anywhere else, and so this is a chance, but you have to grow up fast. That's a negative. And I can imagine Shelley, if all of a sudden Nate, people don't handle that real well in our house if he had to leave right now. So it is a tough situation, but there's obvious reasons why it's a tremendous advantage to get here and get going.
And I'm sorry, one last question. Clay?
Does Haskins start the spring with a lead?
I have no idea. That's going to be evaluation every day as we get ready for spring practice.
Anything you told Weber and he decided to stick around? Said he had a talk with you, I think.
Yeah, I more listened. I listened to him, and Coach Alfred and him have a good relationship. I talked to his father, and the maturity level, what's the next level, is pretty tough. Are you mature enough to go handle life in the National Football League, or do you need another year? And his opinion, he needed another year, and I agreed with him. But, there were no promises, and we're going to do this for you and all that. I let those guys do the talking and then see if we can help them.
How many more years
Thank you.
are you going to?